stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. All right, any comments from the public today? Not seeing any. Let's move on. Any corrections to the agenda or consent calendar? Any board members like to pull anything from consent for discussion? Very good. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll move adoption of the consent calendar.
Second. Any discussion?
And motion passes unanimously.
Okay. We don't have any items under 5, so let's go to item 6A. Is that Andrea? Yes, Andrea.
Good afternoon, President Peterson and directors of the board. District staff will be working with California Special District Associates, Finance and Group, Oppenheimer, Bartle Wells, and Jones Hall the first quarter of 2025 to obtain tax-exempt financing for all or a portion of several water projects which have been designated on your board agenda items. The intent is to obtain this via a water revenue bond or certificate of participation. Are there any questions?
Questions for Andrea? Actually, any public comment on this thing? Desired action?
It is requested the board approve resolution number 327324, intention to reimburse expenditures from the proceeds of tax-exempt financing.
So moved.
Second. Moved and seconded. Any other discussion?
And the motion passes unanimously.
Very good. Thank you, Andrea. Let's go to item 6B. Julie.
Good afternoon. I apologize for the last-minute scramble coming out of another meeting. But we have a couple of consultants on the line to help answer any questions that you might have about this agenda item today, which has to do with continuing the surface water rights application that the board has submitted with the state.
Julie, can you move a little closer to Mike, please? Thank you.
Sure thing. I'm going to confirm that they are with us and that they can hear us. Sachi and Liz, are you out there and can you hear us okay? Let's see, I heard them both speak, but I didn't. We're here. Make sure it's going through there. You can hear it. Go. Okay. Here we go. Yes, we want, and okay, that looks good. Okay. Let's see. Can you guys hear us now? No, I don't see. See them trying to speak. Go through. Okay. One more time. Can you guys hear us now? Yes. Okay. So I'm going to be out with this probably. That probably won't be loud enough. Okay. Let me get one other. Okay. And if all else fails, I can take their answer and repeat them into the microphone. We made it a little bit more complex by having 2 people in 2 different locations both calling in to help support the presentation. So,
Julie, are you going to want to go through the whole thing and then get questions, or do you want it to be interrupted as you go?
I can handle either way. If there's a really pertinent, relevant question as I'm going through the slides, please feel free to speak up and chime in.
Looks like a fairly short,
It is.
so maybe we'll just let you get all the way through it and then we'll go back to it. Board members, is that okay?
Yes.
Good.
Sachi and Liz, can you try again to speak? Okay, one more time. Okay, so I can hear you on my laptop, and I'll just have to relay if anyone has a question that I need input from Sachi and Liz at the end of the presentation. So with that, I have just a brief presentation today to kind of recapture some of the recent past that we have walked you through with regard to the surface water application, and also taking into consideration the presentation we received from Mark Silas, our Water Resources Manager at the last board meeting, kind of bringing it all together, and by the end of the presentation, hopefully you have the information that you need to feel comfortable authorizing staff to go ahead and proceed with the continuation of the water rights application. So just quickly revisiting some of the recent steps that the district has been taking towards securing its water supply. Back in January of 2020, the district submitted an amended application 23393 and exhibits to the State Water Resources Control Board. That original application had originally been submitted in 1969 by the district, and was for 19,000 acre-feet a year. The amended application scales that back to 10,800 acre-feet a year. In fall of 2023, so just this last fall, we heard back from the State Water Resources Control Board asking if the district was still interested in continuing this application, and asking for us to renotice the application. In this most recent February, we held a workshop with you to kind of give you the bigger picture, going much more deeply into the details of the application process for these surface water rights. And then just at the last board meeting, as I mentioned already, Mark Silas provided a staff report talking about our current water supply picture and some challenges that we have with augmenting that water supply relying solely on groundwater. This is the same list of benefits that we presented to you at the board workshop in February. I just wanted to put them before you again today, but I wasn't intending to walk you through them. One thing I want to mention, what you won't see on this list of benefits is the purpose of securing surface water rights for enhancing future development within our community. That is not one of the benefits that we're recognizing, and it wasn't the purpose of the original surface water rights application. We are much more focused on improving the security and resilience of our water supply for our current community. As we've discussed at length, the district's reliance solely on groundwater leaves the community in a precarious position, especially in the face of new contaminants. Just last week, the EPA announced new MCLs for a suite of chemicals that you've all heard of, the PFAS family of chemicals. It was for just 6 of the constituents in that family. There are many, many more, and we expect that more MCLs will be rolling out in the future. We have had detections of constituents in the PFAS family from 3 of our 12 active wells, plus 1 of our offline wells, but it's not connected to our system, but it hasn't been abandoned either. Really it's those 3 that we're the most concerned about. However, of the 6 constituents that we have the most recent MCLs, only one of the wells had a positive hit for one of those constituents during one of the multiple sampling events. So at this point in time, we're not really certain how this most recent finding is going to impact our ability to serve water from those wells. We'll be tracking this, but it's just a demonstration of how, at a moment's notice, our picture can change as far as our water supply security with our current network of groundwater wells. So when we had the board workshop, this flow chart had been prepared for you. We didn't really get into the meat of it, but you may recognize it. You may have seen it before. This is the next steps in the water rights permitting process. And we're really focused on the portion of the process that's in the top half of this slide. So that's where we're at. Kind of zooming in on those elements. We have completed the application, and we are basically now moving towards the public notice period with the State Water Resources Control Board. This next phase, we're expected to take quite a long time. Our best estimate is that it could take up to 8 years to move through this public notice period and the associated programmatic CEQA that goes along with the board's approval of a surface water rights application. You'll see on this slide we have some dollar values in here. Since the board workshop, we worked with our consultants to develop some very high-level estimates of what the technical support costs can be expected to be in the coming years associated with the processing of this application. So this first piece would be diving into some of the technical elements of the impacts of a surface water draw from the lake at any one of those 4 locations in support of the public noticing by the state. And then going into a more rigorous but still programmatic CEQA effort that may include like development of an environmental impact statement. So we tried to think through what the order of things might be and what does the kind of the high level tasks are associated with each of the next steps. First and foremost, we need to respond to the state saying, yes, we'd like to proceed with this application by April 30th. And then shortly after that, we will be returning to you with a consultant selection for a water supply master plan. Now, this is something that Mark spoke to you about when he was here last meeting, and we think that there's opportunity here to kind of combine these 2 efforts, the surface water rights application, with a more holistic look at our water supply situation for the district, so that we're taking a more thoughtful, comprehensive path forward for our water supply. So in June, we would likely be coming to you with a selection of consultants to help us through both the water supply and the next phase of the surface water rights application. After that, we're really working off the state's timeline for the following steps. Once they've received our intent to continue the application, they're going to go back and review that application, and we'll be waiting to hear from them for when when they're expecting to proceed with the public noticing. We'll want to get ahead of their public notice with our own public outreach campaign, make sure that our partners within the community and the community at large kind of understand the reasons behind our application for these surface water rights. And then we'll be on the state's timeline for the development of the CEQA associated with the surface water rights application. The end goal of this phase is getting that permit issued from the state for the surface water rights application that will allow us to proceed into a phase of identifying, what is the right project, looking at those alternatives, developing the project, doing the project level CEQA, and moving it forward. And like I said, this first phase, steps 1 through 5 here, we're looking at this may take us up to 8 years, depending on how quickly the state moves with us and the level of urgency that the district sees for securing the surface water rights. During that 8-year period, we'll continue doing what we've been doing, annually reporting to the state on our use of surface water or groundwater in lieu of surface water, which is what we have been doing in the past. Any questions?
I'm going to have a bunch, so I'll let you guys go first.
Yeah, I mean, probably getting at some of the questions you were going to have, but as I look at, and I think I mentioned as we were talking last time about our drilling options and so forth was, as we look at that, as we look at what's going on with Tahoe Keys, and kind of the coupling of those two things meets our overall strategy. And so, looking, from the process, given timeline, and understanding we need to move forward by April 30th, I guess what I'm really looking for is to buy ourselves a little bit more time with the smallest amount of financial investment possible. Because ultimately, like, what I want to see in the coming months is really kind of the cost-benefit analysis, with an overlay of different kind of variable concerns as a whole package, looking at the, kind of the entirety of those things. And as it exists right now, I wouldn't want to say one way or the other. I guess if I was to kind of assume based on everything we go with that the likelihood we go with surface water is probably not great, given a lot of realities. But I'd like to keep that option open right now as we kind of align those other things. So advance with the state. But, I mean, you said so yourself, this is incredibly long permitting pathway. So, I mean, we all know how to accelerate versus kind of just slow play things. To slow play things until we can make that determination, and then just feel like I have enough information to really understand kind of the deviations of what we're talking about. Because, fundamentally, to all the original points, I love the idea behind it. Always going to quote Dwayne Wallace in this moment, put a straw in the lake, right? And, but without knowing what those deviations and kind of it all entail, I don't feel prepared to say one way or the other, Yeah,
I think it's an important point that this is a long process, right? We're already 4 years into the process. Just to get to the point of the state responding and saying, are you sure you want to? And so, like we've got on this slide, the immediate kind of out the gate investment, which will likely get kind of absorbed by this water supply master planning process, is this $180,000 to $215,000. That's the next step in investment in this process.
Right. I know. I appreciate that. What I'm saying is, like, you're going to tell them by April 30th, hey, we're going to go, and then there's going to be a window before you have to respond. How long is that window, right? And so, I mean, it's not like May 1st, you're like, okay, here's $180,000, let's get going.
Yeah, no.
Right. So what I'm saying is, how long can we kick down that $180,000 down the road? Because what I really want to do is have this internal conversation, given all these elements, before we spend any money. And I just want to give ourselves the flexibility to do that, if at all possible.
So can I ask you a question? Since I wasn't here at the last board meeting, the concept of a water supply master plan, is that general concept something that the board is interested in seeing us do, because this technical report that's listed here would be a component of that. And so,
I mean, I'd say yes. I think just because the variable set in terms of like you said, the different criteria that are now being treated for, what's that going to mean? Where, you know, as you extrapolate that out, what that's going to mean, you know, I honestly couldn't tell you. I have an understanding of that. I can't speak for anybody else. And so the understanding of those elements would be great. I think that's helpful too. I'm curious if, like, given some of the grant funding opportunities we're working at, if we could kind of look to pool that in with some of those funds.
mm-hmm.
You see where I'm going with this in
Yeah.
terms of like just defraying costs or seeing if we could capture that cost. Because I'm in favor of the planning exercise, especially if we get someone who can pay for it.
And I would echo a lot of what Nick just said. And it has been a process that we have invested a lot of time and energy in. So I would hate to just go, oh, I don't know. I would say that we should move forward. But echo what Nick said, let's figure out, you know, I would hate to spend a lot of money without having a really definitive plan and an understanding of, you know, long-term what this means.
Yeah, I guess just to build on that, I mean, I look at it from the board standpoint as, you know, we're kind of authorizing a submittal to the state, and to me, it's like, yeah, we're kind of authorizing the technical stuff too, like proceed with developing the rationale, and then there's more check-ins along the way, I think, with the board. So I think to make that clear is important, and maybe articulating where we see those check-in points, because it's probably post-technical, where you get a real idea, whether it's the master plan or even some of these technical reports, and then it's pre-investing in CEQA documentation, right? Because there's another big step that you're launching into and saying, okay, we're going to take it a step further. And then there's probably even another step at the end of the CEQA process, whether it's kind of a no-go or no-go based on the CEQA findings. So I see kind of a number of check-in points, but and it's methodical, and I think how I'm seeing this first, and I could be corrected, is approving the submittal to the state and kind of initiating that technical work, that first, like you said, the first 180 to 215 ballpark, to get us more information to really better understand the financial implications of going full blast.
Yeah.
I mean, is that correct?
I think you nailed it.
Okay.
That's one point that I wanted to make during Julie's presentation, was everything you hit on, that there will be multiple steps where the board will be involved. And so anytime anything comes up that's going to require expenditures or a significant amount of staff time investment, we will involve you in that for sure.
So I guess in terms of the authorization today, is it an authorization of 180 to 215K check, or is the check-in point, you know, I'm really
That would be before that.
Right, and I'm focusing on this because we just sent out notifications to the entirety of the community. And, you know, I'm sure like many other board members, right? And so as you know, just in terms of just being responsible, this is a person's salary, right? And being thoughtful to that. And so, yeah, and again, because I think if I was a betting man, I think surface rights probably don't become the solution. But that's why I want to be mindful of it, not to close the door, but also to be thoughtful to what the likely outcome of this analysis is probably going to be.
To be clear, there is no monetary commitment that you're making for the district today. It is really just a resubmit the application, and then the next monetary commitment would come when we return to you after our proposals have been received on the water system master planning effort, and we're asking you to give us authorization to work with a particular consultant. That'll be the next dollar value. Yeah.
I was just curious, to what extent can we leverage our groundwater management plan, and how might that fit into the overall picture? Is there opportunities for cost savings related to that?
I'm sure that there are ways that we can leverage the information that is in the groundwater management plan, you know, a lot of that effort has also been paid in part by El Dorado Water Agency. I don't know where they are at with funding efforts like a water supply master plan, that would be one of the first places we would turn to find a partner to help pay for it. So.
My next one for Keith, I'm just looking at the schedule and, going through CEQA. I guess there's the question that is there any kind of NEPA requirement as part of this as well? I guess we could probably pull that all together. But kind of the legal services scope, a notion of kind of what that looks like.
Yeah, and I believe these numbers that Julie gave you include our estimate of our ballpark fees, which would be incurred reviewing the CEQA process.
Yours are actually on top. This is just the consultant's fees, but you did give me some ballparks.
Yeah, and we would be checking for these CEQA compliance throughout the process. It's our preference to be involved from the initial stages of the CEQA process.
And then what would be, I guess, more of the scope side of that? Like, we're not asking you to, you're basically reviewing some of these documents, not so much as you're writing the document.
No, we would work hand in hand with the consultants to make sure that their work product meets the requirements of CEQA.
Yeah, I guess I'm in the same place Nick Exline is in, where I think your item number one, submit the change petition. Sounds like that's the only action item requested tonight. That's a virtually no cost step. And then you're going to go out with an RFP for the water supply master plan. I fully support that. But the remaining actions I don't yet. I wouldn't support starting the CEQA document until number 2 is done. Because we need to, this is a really costly thing. Surface water, just getting through the permitting is going to be a couple $1 million just to get, because the CEQA document is going to be more than what's on the page, I'm convinced. We did one on the McCollum River and it was over $1 million. And that was the McCollum, it wasn't Lake Tahoe. Resolving protests is a big deal because they don't resolve easy. Usually it ends up being a deal, mitigation type of thing, and there's usually, when it comes to water, people just say, no, I'm fighting him, and it ends up being a lawsuit. So you don't resolve those things, they turn into lawsuits. So I'm just saying, I'm good with going through number 2 on your list of next steps, but then stopping and making a decision to go any further than that. And on your water supply master plan, that needs to be a water supply and system master plan in order to get the costs. You've got to be able to, for me to be able to make a decision, I need to understand alternative 1 with surface water.
Mm-hmm.
What's that cost? What are the implementation implications? What's the timeline? Alternative 2, all groundwater. Same thing. What's the cost? What's the implementation? And they should both have equivalent end states.
Yes.
So if you're trying to, achieve full fire flow, full, peak hour demand, no pressure problems in the system with this alternative, you need to do it with this one. So I would need to see the cost and the timelines. And what you mentioned earlier, the PFAS issues, my understanding is the timeline for compliance is something like 2 to 3 years. Compliance.
I believe it was 5.
I think there's 3 to ramp up and understand your system, and another 2 to comply.
Okay.
But still a relatively short time frame relative to where we're at in the surface water rights application process.
So we got 8 years to just get to the permit stage on surface water. Then we've got to implement it. So we're talking 10, 12 years before there'd actually a plant in the ground supplying water. So we're going to have to comply with PFAS and any other groundwater regs during that time.
Yes,
So
if there are impacts to the wells that we need to address, yeah.
Yeah, so you'd end up kind of doubling their effort. You'd have to buy the treatment plants for the wells, and then buy the water treatment plant, and maybe retire the well treatment plant. So, you know, I'm looking for a real fair analysis of the various alternatives.
Understood. And Sachi, she stressed that, you know, this 8 years that they put on the timeline, that is sort of the slow boat. You know, if we're not contacting the state saying, hey, we've got a real problem we need to solve, we need to get these secure, we may be able to shorten, but right now we don't have a reason to put our foot on the accelerator. So.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to shorten it. I think it only gets longer. Actually, you look at on your first slide on, you know, where we've been and what we've done. We submitted this thing in 2020. Then they get back to us in 2023, 3 years later, saying, you still want to do this? Mm-hmm. So they haven't done diddly squat on their side of the state. And so I don't think there's going to be any acceleration. That's just me. But so I guess to reiterate, I'm good with numbers 1 and 2, and then potential off-ramp depending on what the findings are of the water supply master plan.
Well, that's good, because that is when we intend to return to have the next conversation about this at sometime in June. And, you know, in the meantime, with the resubmission of the application, we'll be having conversations with you to kind of suss out, you know, what are they seeing as their timeline for next steps? When do we expect to hear back from them, basically? And hopefully when we return to you in June, we'll have a little bit more clarity on that.
Yeah, and I guess if the timelines were halfway close, then it may make a difference. But if we've got to fully comply with PFAS in 5 years, that means it's got to be built and operational in 5 years. And we won't even be halfway, well, we'll be halfway through the permitting process with an uncertain outcome on the surface water by that time. So I think it's a doubling of projects if we go with surface water. So it's going to be very expensive. Our rate increases have been, you know, out the roof already. And that's just doing the basic job with what we have without completely remaking our system. For right now, to me, it appears no real good reason. I don't see a compelling reason to double the cost of our water right now. So hopefully the water supply master plan will point out what that compelling reason is or not.
And to make sure that we're all clear, based on the PFAS regulations that came out last week, we are not starting a 5-year clock right now. We do not have a situation that we are having to immediately address. We are tracking these other constituents that are recurring in our wells, and then the one well that we had one hit one time, we'll continue tracking that. But yeah.
I mean, I just want to reinforce, I mean, I'm in the same boat in terms of getting that information on the water supply master plan in order to kind of make that subsequent decision. And I also think that, you know, Dave's points are definitely well taken and should factor into your development of your scope for your RFP, because if you're not back to us until you're basically trying to award the contract, I just hope that that scope is, you know, reflective of the input you received today.
Yeah, and you know, when we're hiring consultants, they really are the experts, and so we give them kind of a general framework of where we're trying to get, and then they're proposing to us their scope, right? And we will bring that scope to you to review and buy off on.
Oh, okay, you're going to bring the RFP.
No, the scope of the project that they want to perform for us. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we have an opportunity to take a look at that scope before it's released and comment on it? Is that what you're saying?
Before you, yeah, it's their proposal.
Before we bring it forward, so before we actually announce it, that kind of thing, so we can kind of noodle on it a little bit?
Yeah, and if you wanted like to see the consultant's proposed scope at a operations committee meeting in advance of the board item coming forward where it's being presented, I think that's totally doable.
I mean, I guess for me, just being on the ops committee, I would appreciate any opportunity to kind of get through various tasks and stuff that are being identified as you're formulating the scope. I think that would be really helpful for us. Before the RFP, yeah. Oh, okay. Just so we can have this talk around it. I just want to understand, better appreciate kind of what it is and where other parts and pieces fit in and where can we leverage that, or even like when it gets to funding. So kind of when it gets to the scope and there might be some, funding in there to reduce our consumption of energy to move water around the system. Maybe there's other funding that might help to support the development of such a master plan. So I guess, again, just trying to think creatively of it not costing our ratepayers any additional money, and there might be some things out there for us.
Great. So I can definitely work with Mark to prepare his RFP and have that ready for the next operations committee meeting, and then we'll hit the street after that with the opportunity. And that'll probably extend a little bit by when we'll be back to you with a recommended proposal, recommended consultant. But that's not a problem.
Okay. Is there any public input on this item? Good. Okay. All right. Julie, what's the requested action?
I'm asking that you authorize the general manager to notify the state water board of the district's intent to continue the application for surface water rights from Lake Tahoe.
So moved.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? Let's go. Sorry, Julie, we can't vote on this. How about all those in favor? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Is it the presentation?
Unopposed. So 5 ayes. Thank you, Julie. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Sachi and Liz. I think I.
Oh, there it is. You get to vote twice.
Yeah. Oh.
Okay. That's official. All right. Let's go to standing and ad hoc committees and liaison reports. Starting with you, Nick.
Nothing.
We had Ops Committee on Tuesday, a new date. Ivy was there from our sewer team and gave us an update on kind of what they're working on in terms of CCTV and cleaning out systems. Looks like they're kicking butt, getting out there, doing stuff. Sounds like we are moving towards some more fire hydrants. We're basically working on fire hydrant assessment and replacing and putting in more fire hydrants, especially in the county. Some other hot topic items, Pope Beach, the pump station's there. It looks like they're working with the Forest Service trying to find a solution to get those things corrected before the season kicks in. Hopefully everything, we can move through that special use permitting before that happens. Let's see, there's some, talked about some staffing items. The solar project is going to the TRPA governing board next Wednesday, the 24th. Time certain. I know Nick will be there. I'm not going to comment on that. I want to mention that. And I don't know, Nick, is there anything else I should throw in there?
No, well done.
Yeah, just a couple things we did talk about is partnership opportunities, or just working with like that Resource Conservation District at Johnson Meadow, and they're doing a meadow restoration project there, and so it sounds like we've been engaged on that for a few years. And so we talked a bit around that. And then also some opportunities to work with Caltrans. I guess they have some paving work coming up. Just kind of being ready to kind of anticipate some of those opportunities to deal with our facilities before they do work or during. Anything else?
Any more to add? And I'll just, El Dorado Water Agency meeting, our last meeting was canceled at the last minute. I don't know why, but we didn't have it. So, on to next month on that thing. I will say, that's a board member. We'll go to board member reports and then I'll start off. On the solar, Mr. Skeptical himself got solar put on his house. And I will tell you that the net metering is kind of cool. But what I've really observed is that the power output fluctuates a lot. Like on a cloudy day, it can be 25% of what it is on a sunny day. So if you're really counting on the power for anything, you got to have net metering. You have to have that supply coming from the big brother's got to be there to fill in all the gaps. Or battery backup, flywheel, whatever. Pump water up the hill and bring it back down, whatever. You got to cover those low spots, and not having that, you'd be sunk, really.
Save money, Dave?
Yes, I think so.
That's what I wanted to get to, everybody.
Well, that's the only reason I did it. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
We thought you convinced you.
You save money. You do. But that's only because, the supply is out there to fill in all the gaps. So, but yeah. All right. Any other board member reports?
I just, probably everybody in the room has already read the article in the South Tahoe Now about some of the TOT dollars coming back, more of those TOT dollars coming back to the basin, and it's looking like they're going to repave Fallen Leaf Road. And so I know we have a lot of manholes along there, so I just want to make sure that our staff is aware of that. And hopefully, I don't know when it's going to go, maybe this year or next year, but it sounds like there's money coming to take care of that. And I don't know, we have, 19 different manholes along that road somewhere. So I think that's probably going to impact us in some way. So.
Okay.
I just was going to say, actually, I have a couple things. I was on an 8th grade trip to D.C. and New York, and it was interesting to be a fly on the wall with a bunch of 8th graders. But there was one great moment. There are a couple of things I wanted to share with everybody. So one morning before breakfast, I was kind of listening to all the kids gather talking, and they started talking about how much they hated the water in Washington, D.C., and how we had the best water in the world. And then they started comparing other places they went to and how nobody's water compared to Tahoe. So I think that was really important to remember, and I was like, I can't wait to tell everybody next board meeting. And then, Shelley, I wanted to share this with you in particular. When we were in the congressional building, I decided I wanted to see if I could get a ticket to go in and talk, And the lady I asked, and she kind of gave me a confused look. She's like, well, is your representative with you? And I said, well, no. I'm a small-town local official, and you guys gave us some money for some water lines and some fire hydrants, and I figured I'd just go in and say hi to everybody and thank you. And she laughed, and she gave me a ticket, so I got to go in, so it was great. But no, really, really fascinating to hear the kids and just kind of the comparison, and the community knows. And then again, just touching on Shane, the solar vote at CPUD for us at TRPA next Wednesday. A lot of work's gone into it. I'll definitely be there, and really, really looking forward to it. So great work to get this far.
Very good. Let's go to staff attorney reports.
Good afternoon, Board. Ryan Lee, Customer Service Manager. I was going to give an update today on the district's Customer Assistance Program. So if you'll remember, we talked about this a couple meetings back, kind of in the context originally at one of the board workshops of the proposed rate increases. So the board requested that the staff kind of look into the district's Customer Assistance Program and take a look at how we've run that program in the past, how we've outreached it in the past, and how we partner with Liberty Energy on their CARE program. So I did some research, learned some interesting stuff, so I'm back today to kind of give you an overview of the district's program and some ideas and hopefully get some feedback from the board. Okay, so to summarize, the district's Customer Assistance Program, this is a long-time program that the district has offered. Right now, we offer a 25% discount on the water and sewer bill to any residential customers who meet the qualifications. We do partner with Liberty Energy, and we always have on this program, so that anybody who qualifies for Liberty's CARE program and is enrolled in their program automatically qualifies for the district's program. So a little bit of history. For most of the time we had this program, it was a 20% discount. So a few years back in 2019, I actually went looking for when this happened because I remembered it, but we increased the discount, or the board did, from 20% to 25%, and that actually happened April of 2019. in the context of the last Prop 218 rate increase process. So during that process, kind of in the early parts of it, the board had increased that discount to try to mitigate and offset some of the impact to these customers who meet those income requirements. We are prohibited by state law from using any rate revenues to fund this discount. So the district is fortunate that we have property tax revenues. That's what we use to fund this discount, and that works fine. Last year, I actually called around the lake to see if any other of the public utilities had a program like this. We were kind of looking into it at that time, and we had been approached by some different customers, commercial customers actually at the time, who had asked if we would consider extending eligibility to them. And at that time, none of the public utilities around the lake had a program like this. In the time since then, I think North Tahoe PUD now does, or Tahoe City, I think a couple of them are looking at it. So we're seeing this is becoming kind of more popular, and they have the same requirements of finding some kind of alternative funding source for it. Right now we have 422 accounts enrolled in our customer assistance program. That's about 3% of customers. The application process is with us, since most of the process is really getting enrolled in Liberty's program, we tried to make it as easy as possible. We have a one-page application that we ask for the customer to just sign and acknowledge the district's program requirements, as well as provide documentation that they are enrolled in Liberty's program. As far as the district's program requirements, the requirements are that this only applies to residential customers, and it must be their primary residence. We do not require that the owner be living in the residence. So a tenant who's a full-time tenant, and that's their primary residence, can qualify for the program as long as they certify that they are the ones who are paying the district's bill. Liberty works the same way. So that's kind of an overview of our program. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about Liberty's program because a question had come up on what are the requirements for enrolling in that program and what does that process look like as we kind of consider whether that's a barrier to entry for our customers getting the help that they need on our bill. So I did a little bit of research on something I didn't know a whole lot about, but the CARE program is actually a California state program that has been legislated. So it's part of the Public Utilities Code, and it's been legislated that the CPUC, so the California Public Utilities Commission, which regulates private electric utilities, as well as other utilities, they mandate that they offer this program. So the CPUC actually sets the income eligibility. This is actually codified and legislated that the income requirements are automatically set to 200% of the federal poverty limit. So that is adjusted annually. And it's actually the Public Utilities Code says that it can't be any higher than that. So the CPUC cannot raise the income, the minimum income eligibility limit past 200% of the federal poverty limit. The CPUC has required electrical utilities, if they have more than 100,000 customers, they're required to offer a 30 to 35% discounted care rate, but any utilities who have fewer than 100,000 customers are required to offer a 20% discount. So Liberty does have fewer than 100,000 customers. They offer a 20% discount on their care program. So one of the things that I learned is that actually there's been some recent legislation that has changed this program quite a bit, or at least the requirement the CPUC has to enforce in order to make it to encourage participation. So these are things, there are a bunch of interesting things. So one of the requirements is that the CPUC mandate that the electrical utilities share information with California state kind of social service departments, because one of the things that can qualify you for the program is participation in one of any of the state's kind of social welfare programs or social benefit programs, and there's a whole list of them. I can give you some examples, but essentially what they're after is anyone who enrolls with one of those programs through the state is actually automatically enrolled in their local energy provider's care program. So there's some of the new legislation has beefed up some of the information sharing, especially between electrical utilities and the state programs. They've added quite a few outreach requirements. So one of the things, they actually specify that there has to be an outgoing message on all phone calls where a customer is seeking to establish service, or if someone's put on hold, they have to have some messaging playing that kind of gives a brief overview of the care program. they're required at least quarterly to put language on the front in a visible place of the power bills talking about the care program. Anytime a customer representative is discussing with a customer any kind of affordability issues, or if a customer requests a payment plan, they are required to go over the eligibility requirements for the care program. So I only kind of give some of this background because it's a little bit of the context that I found helpful in, as we try to understand the program that's really the backbone of our program. Now, talking about Liberty particularly, I said that they do have a 20% discount, and Liberty, in line with this, what the legislation has really said is that their goal is to make the program accessible to as many people as possible and really do aggressive outreach. The CPUC is actually using census data to do their own outreach. So they're doing it saying, targeted outreach to certain customers saying, you may be eligible for this program, contact your local electrical provider. So the way that Liberty's made some changes recently to their application process. So we learned a lot about that in working with them through kind of our information gathering phase here. But Liberty, right now, they have a couple ways to apply. You can actually complete the entire application online, or they have a paper form that's just a one-page form. So the main difference that they made recently, and it's partly, in line with this attempt to make this as easy as possible for customers to apply, and partly related to the fact that they told us that they have, for our service area, one person who's processing these care applications and kind of running that program. And right now they have somewhere around 3,000 customers enrolled in the program just here locally. So what they've done is that they have the same income requirement. There are two ways to qualify. One of them is just strictly based on income, that your income is under these eligibility limits of 200% of the federal poverty limit. And just to give you an idea of what that looks like, for a household of one or two people, that's $39,400 a year. 3 people is just under $50,000. 4 people be $60,000. So the limits are fairly low. And I only say that because we have heard that from our customers, many of them who are struggling to pay the bills, they're retired and on a fixed income, but they do not meet this income eligibility limit. But right now what Liberty's doing is that their application process requires a self-certification, that you either meet that income level or that you're enrolled in any one of the state social service programs. So these are things like Medi-Cal, Medicaid, WIC, CalFresh, those are the big ones, SNAP. So right now they've made the application process fairly painless. You can apply online and you do the self-certification that you meet one of the requirements, either income or enrollment in one of these programs. They reserve the right to request documentation verifying that you meet this requirement, but they're not currently asking for that. Once you submit an application, they said that they're processing these routinely within a week. So that within 1 week of submitting the application online or in the office via the paper form, that these customers are being enrolled in the program and kind of added to the list. So they see that discount hit their bills pretty quickly. Every 3 years, Liberty kind of reaches out to re-verify, but that is also a self-certification. So after you're enrolled in a program for 3 years, they require that you essentially certify that you still meet the eligibility requirements for the program. So those are some of the things that they've done to make their process a little easier recently. What we've been doing is working closely with Liberty. This kind of came out of one of the things that happened recently was that public or community event at the library that Liberty was hosting. Southwest Gas was there. There were some county offices there. And this was really focused on these financial aid and social welfare programs, and the district was invited to be a part of that. So we were able to be there representing our program. And the feedback that we got through that process, we signed up 25 new accounts that day, but the feedback that we got is many of the people who had been longtime enrollees in the CARE program with Liberty were not aware that the district had a program. So we've been working with Liberty because what they do is they share their list of enrolled customers with Southwest Gas. who's also required to have a similar program. We have been working through kind of getting some non-disclosure agreements in place so that we can be on that list of utilities that receive this from Liberty. So we are expecting, we finally got through all the paperwork, and we're expecting to have that list next week. So some of the things that we are planning to do to increase participation in the district's program is that we're going to take that list that we get from Liberty next week, and we're going to review it. Not everybody who's on that list will be eligible for our program. The main reason that is we have quite a few apartments or condo buildings that are electrically sub-metered. So some of those tenants may have their own electric counts and be able to be in the CARE program, but the district has a master metered service for that property. I know that there are, I think, quite a few of the customers on their list will fall into that boat, but I'm sure that there are people, you know, since they said that they have about 3,000 customers, we have 400 in our program. There will definitely be some who are enrolled in Liberty's program and qualify for ours, but are not aware of it or are not enrolled. So one of the things that we're going to do is take their list and kind of filter through it and see which of those customers are going to be good candidates for our program. And we're going to do targeted outreach, basically get in touch with these folks and let them know that we have this program and make the application process as easy as possible. Since we'll have verification they're already enrolled in Liberty's program, we essentially are just asking them to sign an application saying that they agree to the requirements of our program. We talked about foregoing that step, but thought that there was benefit in having that documentation. Just, you know, we know that they qualify, but we still want them to at least sign an application agreeing to the requirements of our program and agreeing to, you know, the idea that if they do no longer qualify in the future, we ask that they let us know. But we also have a, you know, every 2 to 3 years, we re-verify. And we have never wanted to accept, or the reason that we partnered with Liberty in the first place was to avoid doing any kind of income verification of our own. The main reason for that was that if we do that and store these documents as our kind of backup documentation for allowing these people into the program, it's really tricky on the IT side as far as how you store that kind of PII, personally identifiable information. So that's one thing that we're looking at. I think that's going to make a big impact, and I'll be able to report back to you on how many new enrollees we get out of that process. The other thing we're doing is the district has never had an online application for our program. We have a paper form. It's a fairly straightforward one-page form. We offer that in English and Spanish. So right now we're in the process of converting that to an easy-to-use online application. We have converted most of our rebate forms and similar things to forms that can be completed through WaterSmart, and we've gotten good feedback on that. We'll still offer the paper forms for anyone who's not comfortable using the tech or anything like that, but a lot of people have been really appreciative of the WaterSmart forms. It's got a nice workflow. It lets the customer know when we receive it, when we review it, and when they've been accepted, so it kind of handles that notification, as well as, you know, having a nice paper trail for us. So that's one thing we're working on. The other thing that we've been looking at is prioritizing new outreach about our program. So in the past, we have the program, we always mention it when we're talking to people who call in or come into the office, especially if they're asking about affordability or if they're telling us that they're on a fixed income. We always go over the details of our program. But what we haven't done a lot of is, you know, kind of direct outreach about the program. And so that's something that we're prioritizing now that we've kind of gotten this feedback that a lot of people were not aware of it. And again, in the context of our proposed rate increases, we really want to make sure that we're doing what we can to get those people who are eligible for the program enrolled. It does make a big difference. So we're working on doing that. We're talking about doing some social media outreach. I think we've done a few of those. And then we can also send WaterSmart emails. And we're looking at doing the first thing that we really want to do is kind of targeted outreach to people who are already in Liberty's program. But this is something that is on our long-term radar now, is we want to keep making sure that we're getting the word out there so that people know that we have this program. So a couple other things that I looked at, because we had talked about what other options we might have for, you know, if we decided that we didn't want to partner with Liberty anymore, or if we wanted to reach people who didn't meet the qualifications for their CARE program. I looked around at some other programs. I was looking for some kind of other program that had different requirements, and what I found is that this 200% of the federal poverty limit is very commonly used in a lot of social programs. So we're seeing that all over the place. It's been codified, like I said, into California law in several places, and that seems to be the gold standard for these kinds of programs. So I can keep looking, but I haven't found anything yet that really is using a different income level or something that might qualify more people. So a couple other options. One thing we have done in the past is look at the level of the discount. So like I said, in 2019, that was increased by the board from 20% to 25%. That is something that the board can do with our program if you're interested in that. The other thing that we could look at is creating a separate program that has different requirements. As an example, one of the things that was brought up was like something that would be an age-based program for senior citizens. There were some clear drawbacks to that. There are pros and cons. But one of the things that we hear fairly often from our customers when they call in and they're saying that they're retired and on a fixed income, and we talk to them about the customer assistance program and Liberty's care program, they're telling us that they do not meet the requirements. So we do have a class of customers who, typically it's two people in a household, but they're making more than that $39,000 a year on their retirement income that you need to qualify for this. But the feedback we're getting from them is that it's still challenging for them to, account for these increasing costs that they're seeing all over the place. And just for your information, so right now, the cost of the program at the current enrollment and rates has been right around $11,500 a month. Comes out to about $140,000 a year. And like I said, that has been funded out of the property tax revenues. It just gives you an idea of where we're at right now. Are there any questions?
Just a quick one on the form coming online. Like, when do we expect that to happen? Is that going to happen ahead of our vote on that?
We can do that pretty quickly. Since we already have a form, it's pretty easy to, what we're doing is kind of taking our existing form and requirements and just converting that. So we can do that, I think, within the next couple weeks easily. Yeah.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Good work, Ryan. Thanks for
Thank you.
going through that with us. Was curious if we've done any analysis like the census data or anything, just to get an idea of how many potential customers could take credit or could take advantage of this program. Just get a sense, for like modeling or anything financially, because I think that would just give us a better sense of how many folks are out there and whether or not we may need to make an adjustment to the qualification or income levels, because it sounds like we're not hitched to the CPC model per se, but I completely understand the administrative burden and potential IT security burden that having that information may bring along with it. So I'm just trying to figure out how we can better assess what little tweaks to the program would mean in terms of folks that could take advantage of it.
Yeah, we have not done that yet, but in my mind, that is the context to this decision, especially if we're looking at making a change to it. So we absolutely can do that, and I think, at least when I was thinking about it, that is the information that I need to make that call on, what that was.
Partners and others, I know there's a lot of discussion about this in the community in regards to affordable housing. So there's been a lot of conversation about average median income. That's more localized, not national. And a lot of the data has kind of already been rounded up by some of our partners. And so maybe to try and save you some time and try and identify some of those savings.
Yeah, we can absolutely do that and come back to you with some different scenarios, or at least what that data looks like, and some ideas on what we may be able to do there.
Ryan, the income threshold is kind of intriguing to me. That 39,400. I don't know the details of that, but if you just look at AGI, adjusted gross income, that's wages, dividends, capital gains, retirement income, et cetera. It's basically all your income. I don't know if that's the number they use, but I could see somebody having a bad year in the stock market and taking a big capital loss and having it offset and falling below that line pretty easy. And then getting on the program. And I'm wondering, is there any kind of averaging or checking up, or how do they determine whether somebody didn't just use that one crummy year in the stock market to get on the gravy train here and then never get off?
Yeah, there's really not. And right now, they're not even requiring documentation. So when you apply for them or apply with Liberty, there's not even an option to upload documentation. So online, it's just purely a self-certification. So the way that it is right now, I mean, it really is something akin to the honor system. They do have a program requirement. So they do have some fine print saying that they reserve the right to request at any time documentation verifying those claims. And they also have some fine print that says if they find out that you were dishonest and did not meet the eligibility requirements at any time, that you're going to be required to pay back the amount of the discount that you received. But I really don't think that this is happening. I don't think that anybody's doing that kind of checking. And what we've heard from Liberty is that they're not requiring verification of income at this time. And we have not ever done that either. We've always, every 3 years, what we do is require an updated electrical bill. And we did that because they're on this every 3-year cycle of verifying eligibility too, but they are not, at this time at least, looking at any kind of documentation.
That's a little bit disturbing for me. I'm fully supportive that somebody's on some kind of assistance program, CalFresh, Medi-Cal, whatever. They have to. They go through some screening to get into those. That's probably more. Well, I don't know if it's more rigid than this 200% of federal poverty threshold, because that's an easy one for a retired person to drop under. So I could see these, how many did you say, 3,000 Liberty customers? I imagine there's quite a few of them that just figured out a way to get a discount.
It's possible.
Once and for all. So I don't know. I don't like that, because the rest of our customers have to pick up the slack. The honest ones.
I mean, I think in some levels, as I look at that question, there's kind of a cost-benefit analysis to what are you going to lose, to what is your admin fee going to be to catch the person trying to get you. And I think you probably end up in the red, if I was to guess, and I think that's probably like why Liberty does it too. And just kudos to you. I mean, this is something I've talked about for a long time in terms of the evaluation. I really appreciate the updates and everything that CARE's done. And in particular, I think that, to Dave's point, the targeted outreach to people that we know are, kind of people that can utilize the service I think is a great idea. I mean, as you look at those income totals, everyone in this room knows how challenging life would be living in those realities, right? There's just no doubt about it. And so I think it's great that we're doing it, that we kind of led the way in the Tahoe Basin. I think to Nick's point, see where it goes in terms of, information we can get into more localized information. But probably, anything we could do to if we moved in that direction, to still move in that direction and avoid kind of the admin headache of doing these things ourselves would be great. But I think as this first step to kind of align with the 218 process and getting that information out there is a great first step, taking us to where we need to be.
And one thing I'll add, one thing that we do is that we do monitor to make sure that, so for example, if somebody calls in to have their mailing address changed and they change that to an out-of-town mailing address and they're on the CARE program, we actually reach out to them and ask, are you moving? Is this no longer your primary residence? And sometimes they are moving, and we'll let them know that then unfortunately you no longer meet the requirements for our program. But sometimes it'll be something like the mail's going to somebody's child who helps with the finances, but their parent is still living in the house full time and qualifies. So we do check on that. Our program requirements actually say on our Form 2 that the district reserves the right to request at any time income verification. So that's something that, like I said, we don't typically, but for the most part, at least up to this point, there's kind of a gut check with the people who we're working with on this, and there's not usually a concern that they're, it kind of comes across clearly that they're struggling. But that is something that we do have reserved the right to do as well. Like, if you were skeptical for some reason, you could ask for, we're going to need to see something showing that you meet the requirements of our program. And it's kind of, to your point, Nick, of just finding that balance on, what that looks like.
Well, the smell test gets you, I think, especially with that human interaction, takes you a long way there.
In my experience, it does totally.
There aren't so many that it wouldn't be, out of the realm of possibility to just do address checks. And if you see addresses on Beach Drive, they're probably, scamming.
I mean, I have serious concerns about doing stuff like that. I mean, we're bumping up against some serious equity issues when, we create a process that's so onerous and it actually discourages the folks that we're targeting to actually take advantage of the program. And I think if you go down that rabbit hole, you're actually shooting yourself in terms of what we're even trying to accomplish here. So I'm hopeful that we can arrive at some better localized data. Targeted outreach is awesome because then you're building, hopefully, new customers that you kind of already know are qualifying for the program, right? And so out of the 400, there's only 422, there may be some cheaters, but I don't think we should focus on that. I think we should focus on what we're trying to do in a positive light and try to get more qualified folks in the door. And I think, and I've just been involved in a lot of the affordable housing conversations lately. And I think, we may want, because a lot of these income requirements are so low that nobody qualifies for. And we know the cost of living in Tahoe, trying to maintain workforce, impact of all the utility bills, including ours, and what that's doing to our community and the exodus that is occurring over the last 10 years. We need to figure out what the right balance is in terms of, our population here and not rely on national figures or even state, mandated PUC level exercises. So that's why I'm just making a big plug for local data, that we can be more targeted and surgical about this stuff. That's all.
I guess I just had a quick clarification. So that 200%, that $39,000 for one person, that's at 200% of the federal poverty rate?
It is, and it's updated every year, typically in that.
So they're not setting it, so that's the max you can go according to CPUC, but Liberty's not saying, well, our qualification is 150%? Correct.
Yeah.
So everybody's pinned at 200%?
Yeah. Which I thought was interesting. They can't take it higher. I mean, the individual utilities cannot go higher. Yeah.
I guess the other part is, for me, I'm totally open to finding some other solution for those that are retired on fixed income. So if we have another additional, opportunity for those folks, another 5% discount if you're a retirement, if you're fixed income, I guess for me, that's where I'm coming from. And again, I agree with what Nick was saying in terms of having more localized information and having that better inform kind of how that program gets implemented. That to me would be really helpful.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Great. Yeah, we will keep working on this. It's an interesting one, but it's something that our customers really appreciate. So we get great feedback on the program.
But since we have you,
I was just going to ask Paul, do you want me to give an update on? Yeah. You want to hear an update on Prop 218?
Yeah, absolutely.
I have that prepared for you. Okay. So, as you know, our Prop 218 notices went out in the mail on Friday, March 29th. So we were definitely, I think the actual official 45-day deadline required by Proposition 218 was to have those things in the mail by April 2nd. So we made that. So far, it's interesting, actually. I've been through the last couple of these, and I was in the customer service department as a customer service rep. And this one has been a little different, and we've actually heard from fewer customers, it seems like. So what we're hearing in customer service is most of the customer calls that we got were actually questions from people who read the Prop 218 notice and had questions about the rates, just about how they're billed. The most common one we're getting is, that on the notice, it shows the rate per sewer unit. It's $17.53 for residential. So they're calling and saying, but my sewer bill is $53. And so it's mostly that of just explaining to them like, well, that's because you have 3 sewer units. This is the rate per. And so there's been a lot of that. The feedback that we're getting as far as formal protests, so the customers have the opportunity to fill out that. We actually included it on the form. All they have to do is date and sign it and put their property address, and they can send in 1 protest per property. We're recording those formal protests that meet the Prop 218 requirements. As of today, we've received 180 of those. So that comes out to just over 1% of our customers. On the water side, we've got about 14,500 water customers. On the sewer side, some closer to 19,000 customers. So it's about around 1% so far. So they will have up until the time of the public hearing to submit those formal protests, but they're kind of trickling in every day. And I've gotten some notes on some of them, and I've talked to a lot of customers, and my staff has talked to a lot of customers. So one thing that we've been doing is we have IT set us up with a new Laserfish form where we're actually able to record some of the comments that we're getting from the customers so that we could provide kind of a general idea of what we're hearing to the board. So far, the number one thing that we're hearing is actually from people who are retired and on a fixed income, and they are telling us that their income is not increasing at the rate that all their costs are, and that the rate increases as proposed are going to be tough for them. So that is actually the vast majority. I've gotten quite a few protests too that don't come with any comments, they just come in the mail. But all of the comments and letters I've seen and the majority of people that I've talked to about this, those are the people that we're hearing from are the ones who are retired and on a fixed income. So it makes this other discussion is timely, and it brings that back into mind when we're doing this. But so far, we've had a couple people that have called in support of the proposed rates. We've had a decent number of people who have made the comment that they don't like it, but they understand. We've had, the number one, and like I said, I've been through a couple of these, and the thing that's been different this time, which I'm happy to see, and a little bit surprised maybe, is that the comments have been really respectful. We really haven't had anybody that's called and yelled at the staff. In the past, we had seen that. And it depends on when the time. We did a rate increase, I know one time right around 2012 at the height of that kind of recession, and that was a tough time for a lot of people. And this is a tough time for people, but we're really, even the people who have come in and said that, the rates, they believe the rates are too high, or they're a second homeowner and they feel that the rates are higher than what they should be paying for the amount they use their house. That's another kind of common one. We've actually gotten fewer of those this time around so far than we have in the past, but that's another big one. They've been respectful. So I think, people have understood that this is the process, and we've encouraged them to, provide their feedback, that we are recording that, and that it'll make its way to the board, and that if they want to fill out that protest, to get that into us so that we haven't, that their opinion is counted. But so far, we have not heard from as many people as we did in the last few Prop 218s, just based on my experience, and the comments have been respectful and productive.
I think that kind of speaks to the outreach and, how the information is presented and kind of the forethought to that. I actually meant to comment on that, as I got it, looking at that perspective, I thought it laid out the issues, why we're doing what we're doing, and kind of the reality in it, in a succinct manner. So maybe that's part of it as well. But positive and somewhat surprising.
Do you have a sense from, maybe not, I'm curious if there's any opportunity or way to kind of explore the protest and understand to what extent they have or have not taken advantage of the CARE program, or do we know? Are some of these people already on the CARE program, but yet they're still protesting?
We're actually tracking that. So I don't have the number, but we will have that for you. So in this Laserfish form, as we kind of collect these protests, we have them by account, and so it's easy to compare that. And we're actually making notes, at least the ones I've been talking to, if they're saying that they're, retired and on that fixed income, we're checking to see if they're in the CARE program. If they're not, we're making them aware of it. But I'm making a comment on the form, so that if we have that comment that they're on a fixed income, I have a kind of a district response to that saying they're enrolled in the CARE program, or they're not enrolled and they don't qualify, or something, or they're not enrolled but they may qualify and they're going to look into it. So we're trying to track as much information as we can so that even if for the customers who are not submitting a formal protest, they're talking to us and we're hearing from them. And so we want to make sure that their feedback is making it past us, to the board's ears. So that's kind of the goal of what we're doing. So when we get to that final rate hearing on May 16th, we will have all of that for you and kind of the summary of what we've heard and what, the number of formal protests. But we're trying to give you as much information as we get.
If there was future board action that, adjusted the system to allow for retirees on fixed income to take advantage, would you have a mechanism, like based on the way you're building out this database, to reach out to those people with those comments, like easily search for that?
Sure. I mean, we could, based on the people who made that comment, we are tracking it. So at least we would have that. We'd be able to reach out to those people. And then, yeah, if we did go that route and had a new program with new requirements, we could, again, look at ways we could do targeted outreach, and we could do broad outreach, too. But yeah, that seems to be the key, is just getting people aware of what we have to offer.
Do you keep a separate ledger for water protests and sewer protests?
Yes, because they can protest water or sewer rates or both. So we do track that separately. And we'll either close. So far, I mean, we've had a handful out of that 180, maybe like 20 that are sewer-only customers. So their sewer protest counts, but they cannot protest the water rates if they're not a water customer.
All right, any other questions? Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan.
All right, let's go to item 10, GM report.
Shelley actually has a real quick report first. Oh, then we'll get you.
Good afternoon. So next week, the Western Caucus is going to be in Tahoe. So the Western Caucus Foundation is our Republican Congress members in the Western United States. They do a tour every year. About 5 years ago, they were in Tahoe. We hosted them here in our boardroom for a policy forum. We're doing that again this time. So I apologize, the schedule keeps changing, so what's on your agenda is slightly wrong. They'll be here on Thursday, April 25th in our boardroom that morning. And so I just wanted to how it's going to work is on Wednesday night, folks are arriving into town, there's a reception at Edgewood. Thursday morning, there's a policy panel here with the Congress members and their staffers. They're doing tours that afternoon. That evening, unfortunately, it's the same evening as our public meeting for our rate increases, but there's a reception at Flat Stick Pub that us and North Tahoe, Tahoe City, TRPA, and the Tahoe Fund, am I missing anyone, are sponsoring to promote Tahoe issues, talk about like Tahoe Restoration Act, Tahoe Water for Fire Partnership. And then Friday, there's a few field tours. I'm trying to sneak into the Caldor Fire tour to talk about the important role water infrastructure played. So I have a few agendas with me. I think really the best place for invitations, if board members are interested in attending, is one of those two evening events, either Wednesday at Edgewood or Thursday at Flat Stick. So after the meeting, I'll have the agenda, and you can let me know if you want to join me. Unrelated, but also something the district is very involved in, is South Tahoe Earth Day Festival is next Saturday, April 27th at Lake Tahoe Community College. This event is put on by lots of agencies and nonprofits that work together in the basin. So a really fun day, 10 to 3 at the college next Saturday. Sadly, the weather is supposed to cool down. But a few upcoming things, please let me know if you're interested in attending.
Thanks, Shelley.
Okay. Okay, just a couple of very quick things for me. Once again, just a reminder, Shelley said it, but a week from today, 6 o'clock in the evening, we'll have our public meeting. So hopefully you can all be there for that. And then just one other thing I want to provide as a reminder in case you're ever approached by any of our ratepayers with this question is regarding our customers' data that we have within our utility systems. We have always considered that data to be private and not public. And from time to time in the past, we would get an inquiry of somebody requesting like a contact listing of all of our customers. And I'm assuming they probably want it for some sort of marketing purposes or whatever. We've always denied them. And just with, the potential upcoming initiatives that we may see in November, local initiatives, I just wanted to remind you of that if we're contacted for any reason by anybody wanting our customer data, whether it's contact information, address information, water use information, et cetera, that is not something we would provide unless this board actually directs us. Otherwise, it's private info.
Or if it's court ordered.
Right?
If the court orders it.
Well, yes, we would comply with that.
Good. Thank you. Any questions? All right. Let's go on item 11, past and future meeting events. As Shelley noted, there is one change there on the future meeting. That's the 25th for the Congressional Western Caucus of the district. I am out of town on the 25th. I'm going to miss the rate workshop, and I can't come to that thing on the 25th. So there we go. With that, any questions, additions? Then do we have a closed session today? Yes. We do. All right, then we're going to adjourn and go into closed session.